Welcome to the Best Books Podcast, an Orchard Hill podcast that helps you choose your next book. I am back today with yet another excellent staff member, Nick Hettinger. Nick, welcome to the show.
Dude, come on. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
Excited to be back again.
Yeah.
Am I the first repeat?
No,
Oh,
sadly.
geez.
You,
Okay. I thought it was special.
Yeah, this is the season of repeats. We had Russ and Katie on, but you guys are the first batch of repeats.
I'll do that. I'll take that. Okay.
Yeah.
I can work with that.
But you did so well that Pop Quiz. What was your book last time?
I forgot it. With by Sky
there we go.
Dathani.
Yeah, if we don't
People were just
remember it-
asking for me, like, man, that guy just got to come back.
Yeah.
Nobody was asking, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Jonathan was.
But that was I enjoyed our conversation so much. I thought let's do it again.
Sweet.
And, we have a wonderful book, Don't Waste Your Life by John Piper to talk about. Before we do that, just want to, as always, to give everyone a promotional item for our suggest a book form that is available in the comment section and on YouTube and in anywhere you get podcasts. This is just a form you can fill out to communicate with us what a book that you've enjoyed. Just be warned that if you do fill that out, I'll probably be reaching out to you to come on Best Books. So we really want to know what you're reading and what you're benefiting from right now. So
Fill it out.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get that engagement.
Let's go, dude.
So, Nick, what's one thing most people don't know about you?
Oh, man. One thing most people don't know about me. I think I'm a pretty out there guy. Like, most people know everything about me.
That's what Russ said.
Is that what Russ said about himself?
Yeah.
He took it from me. He
you,
took it from me. Oh, Russ talked about. No, well, this is pretty recent. I just moved up to God's country.
Okay.
Portersville, Pennsylvania. So if you guys
heard
are
of it.
familiar with McConnell's Mill, I'm like a half mile from there.
Yeah.
It's just, we live in a land of magical creatures, and not really. They're just all the time different animals.
Sure.
Yesterday there was a toad. The other day there was a snake. The other day there was a skunk. There's deer in our backyard, rabbits. So it's like it's a fairy woodland that we live in.
Yeah.
And then sometimes scary snakes.
Yeah.
Literally on our front doorstep, we're walking in, I'm bringing in my Chipotle with Emma, and I'm like, I don't remember leaving a pipe on the front doorstep, and it just starts moving. I was like, okay, it was like a 5-foot snake.
Wow.
So
That's huge.
Supposedly not harmful. So
Yeah,
fine
that's
with me,
good.
but
I think most
disappeared
things
into
are
the
like
nether. I have no idea where it's at. It's
Okay.
just gone forever. So, but yeah, God's country, as I like to call it. So Portersville, if anybody ever wants to come visit,
Yeah.
and you know an exterminator.
Yeah. If you saw a toad just out and about, are you the type that would try to pick it up with your bare hands, or are you more just observing it?
I'm more
peacefully?
observing.
Yeah.
If I'm with people, they're like, Nick, pick it up. I'm like, all right. You know,
Oh,
if I'm by myself, I'm not picking it up.
Sure.
Like yesterday, it was just completely dark out, and I was like, I thought it was a leaf at my foot, and then it jumped, and I was like, all right, that's not a leaf. So
Yeah.
I did not go to pick it up, but I also don't know the difference between frogs and toads. I found that out yesterday, because I said it was a frog, and I was like, you sure it's not a toad? I was like, I have zero clue what the difference is. So it could be either or, no idea.
Yeah.
But either way, probably not going to pick it up.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Well, you moved to Pittsburgh, what is it, 2-3 years ago at this point?
2 years, time of recording, 2 years on Monday, which is July 1st.
Okay.
So, yeah, 2
Yeah.
years almost exactly.
Yeah. What's the most surprising or unexpected thing you've discovered about living in this area?
Oh, man. I might catch some heat for this.
Go for it.
I don't think Pittsburgh has very good drivers. I think, and when I say don't think, Pittsburgh does not have very good drivers. Anytime I'm in the city, mostly I'm always so stressed because I do not know what people around me are going to do.
Yeah.
And trust me, I came from the great state of Indiana. Okay, not that great, but we're always at a moment's notice ready to slander any Ohio license plate that we see.
Yeah.
And I think, Pennsylvania, Indiana, we can unite on the Ohio slander for the most part.
Yeah.
But Pittsburgh drivers are not great. I don't know. You're from out of town. What would you say? Have you
So
had similar
I agree.
experiences?
So I live in Squirrel Hill, so I have to go through downtown every day. And there's one specific bridge, the Veterans Bridge,
Yeah.
where when it connects with the boulevard of the alleys, it is, during rush hour, it is like you're in a third world country.
Oh,
like,
dude, it's
there's,
terrible.
Like there are lanes, but like people are just like going in and out, and it's like no signal, it's just pure reaction time.
Dude.
So
I
I've
mean,
almost gotten slammed.
Where we used to live is like right off Pine Creek Road and
Yeah.
like Blazier Drive, and that gets, during rush hour too, that gets insane. But people just like, they just don't look, they just go. I'm like, what are we doing here,
Yeah.
dude? So Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
sure all the people who are listening to this are great drivers.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anybody else who's not listening to this is a terrible driver
Yeah,
if they live
yeah.
in Pittsburgh.
We have
That's
the perks
truth.
of being just north of Pittsburgh, so we can just blame it.
Yeah,
on
that's true. Yeah,
blame it
yeah.
on the city.
Exactly.
I think that's a lot of it. So,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
so you put on a lot of different student ministry events during the year, just so people get a flavor of what you do. What would you say is like the makings of a perfect student ministry event? Like one that you feel like you leave at the end of the day and you're like, okay, that was exactly the way I wanted it to go.
So yeah, frame of reference. Most recent event we did was we did like an outdoor volleyball tournament. So we did a volleyball tournament with all of our high schoolers. I think couple things that mark a great event. One, you gotta have food for the most part, right? Not every event needs food because sometimes you get repetitive if I just order the same pepperoni and cheese pizzas every single time. But food will bring one, high schoolers, but two, people in general. Who doesn't like free food, right? But two, another biggest thing that I would think of is you got to have some type of like shock element, right? So like when we're talking about student ministry planning events, when we're planning them, the things I try and look for, we're talking about with our interns, is like, what can we do that'll make students go, what? Like, are you serious? Like, we did an all-nighter. This was back in March. So it was like end of March, and we had like the whole night planned out. We had buses show up. The kids got there at 8. Buses showed up. We went to like bus them to a couple different places. We were out in the city until like, well, not in the city, but like out going to different places like Dave & Buster's, roller skating until like 1 a.m. And then we get back, we start playing this like insane run around the church game, and then we split off into this like choose your own adventure type night. So like we had drop down screens in the lobby with like a Mario Kart tournament. We had laser tag set up in the basement. We had an open gym. And I specifically remember when I said this, one of the kids was like, are you serious? You planned all this? How did you guys do this? This is insane. And so when we're like planning events and we want students to like come here and obviously have a good time, and then hopefully leading them towards the gospel, we want students to like walk in and then be like, where am I? Or like, this, are you serious? This is what we're doing. So I think being able to wow students, that's like in any event you do. This could be for adults, for kids, anything. If you can wow students, I mean, it's part of like, right now we're in Kids Fest season at the time of recording. Everything we do with Kids Fest is trying to wow the kids, right? So I think that's one of the most important things. Food, trying to wow them and shock them and surprise them and leave them wanting more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's well said. I've never thought of it as the shock factor, but I think that's doing something that's maybe a little bit more typical, but with a twist. I think is always something that's totally off the wall. I think for you guys.
Yeah. Because the volleyball tournament we did was born out of like, okay, we want to have a bonfire.
Yeah.
But how do we make this into like bonfire? Oh, fun! But it's just like, how can we make it boom? Sure. And so it's like, let's do this huge volleyball tournament. Everybody comes in like costumes. Yeah. You get a prize for best dress, a prize for winner. So, yeah, how can you make it just like crazy?
Yeah,
that's what we're going for. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Well, speaking of crazy, we have a pretty crazy book in front of us.
Oh, we do.
Don't Waste Your Life by John Piper. This book is for young and old people alike who just need to be reminded of the urgency of the Christian message and the urgency of the fact that it's very possible to waste your life. So I think the title of the book is very catchy and is just an invitation to say, hey, what's this book all about? So that's what we're going to talk about today on this episode. Nick, you handed these out to some high schoolers. So why did you choose this book?
Yeah, so for context, every year to our graduating seniors, we like to gift them a book, something to walk into college with. Last year, we gifted them Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, which is a great, just like, intro to Christianity. What does it look like? But a lot of times, C.S. Lewis can also be kind of heady. Like, I find myself as somebody who went to seminary. I'm like kind of reading C.S. Lewis, and he has a kind of a way of talking. Sometimes, like,
you got to reread it,
you know. So, and I remember trying to read C.S. Lewis like high school too, and I'm like, what is happening? So, we're just looking at what is like really specifically can be even more impactful. So I was looking around the books, and I've read John Piper stuff before, read a ton of articles, podcasts, sermons, all these types of things. And so we bought this book, me and Tara, other high school ministry leader, bought the book, read through it. Because just for us, like, what better topic to like get to high schoolers as they're going into college, as they're entering the real world, quotes. Decisions are not being made for them as much by their parents. It's like, okay, you're going to have to start making things. It's probably even more relevant when you leave college too, right? But like, okay, you're getting ready to embark on the whole life journey thing, whatever. How do we not try and waste it? So just looking for that, and then we read it, and it's like, this is awesome. So,
yeah, that's awesome. I myself read this book when I was like late high school, so I think that's definitely changed my life for the better, and I have no doubt that if those students end up reading it, that they'll be deeply impacted
Oh
by
yeah,
that. So
yeah.
that's cool. So the author in the first 2 chapters gives sort of his own personal experience. What do you know about the author, John Piper, and why do you think he decided to write this book?
Yeah, so I've grown, well, I guess most of my high school, John Piper was kind of a source I looked to for good theology, good pastoral understanding. But I think that an important thing is like, which is what John Piper's big on. If you know John Piper, you know like the zeal and the passion that he has for the gospel, that he has for the Lord and for other people. It's pretty much like the essence of like what his content and like pastoral ministry has been for the longest time, right? He obviously wrote the really famous book, Desiring God, and has kind of even shifted the Westminster Catechism of faith when it says the chief end of man is to glorify God. And he kind of like added that little part, the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. So John Piper has written a lot on what it means to like passionately live for Christ, passionately enjoy the gospel, enjoy God in the midst of serving him, right? Because a lot of people can maybe sometimes like, hey, if you're a Christian, I'm going to be persecuted, I'm going to be beat down, and I got to kind of just give into that, right? And he doesn't shy away from that, doesn't shy away from like, he even says a lot of time, like wasting your life means you have to risk your life for the gospel, right? But there's going to be great joy in that. And so that's something I've always been really attracted to with John Piper, because I feel like that's maybe a vein of Christianity I was never too familiar with, or a vein of like a school of thought that I was never familiar with. That it's like, no, we should be enjoying God. We should be taking pleasure in God. We should be tasting and seeing that the Lord is good, right? So yeah.
Something I've always enjoyed about John Piper, because I'm similar. I think when we were in high school, college, I mean, John Piper was one of the biggest names really in Christianity, and I've heard him speak at different conferences, and I remember being in college and he was speaking about an hour and away, and we actually went and heard him speak, and it was good because he's sort of one of those one-note preachers. Like he always comes back to this, what he calls Christian hedonism, like glorify God, enjoy him forever. And I like John Piper's theology because he approaches it from a very rational strain. Right. And what I mean by that is we often think, whether you're a Christian or a non-Christian, that there are certain trade-offs in life. If you decide to be, I guess, a non-Christian, a secular person, living your life without God, the trade-off is I'm going to have a really good time. I'm going to have a good life and enjoy my life. Yeah. Whereas I think from a non-Christian perspective, they look at Christians and they think, well, they're not having the best of time over there, but the trade-off is this feeling of moral superiority. Yeah. And I think John Piper shows that's actually not the case. That the Christian life is for people who want to be happy in a real sense, for people who want to be joyful deep down. And he's unpacking that question of this is a question that everyone asks. We all want to live a life that is meaningful and worthwhile. And he makes the argument, I think, that the Christian life is the one that is full of the most joy and happiness. Right. And I think that speaks to our culture, because we live in a culture where people are promising happiness at every turn. This is what's going to ultimately satisfy you or make you happy.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah. This book, we'll talk more about it, but I really enjoyed it.
Sure. So let me just go through the basic outlines so people understand sort of how he approaches this topic. So like I said, chapters 1 and 2, it's all about Piper's personal testimony. And honestly, if you only have time for chapters 1 and 2, I think it's still a really good read. It's inspirational in how he, it's very relatable in how he talks about his college years and trying to answer that question. You get the picture of John Piper. This is kind of an offhanded comment, but you don't really get the sense he was like very fun at parties, like in college. He's very like philosophical. He's very like, oh man, I want to live a meaningful life. You know, sometimes if you know anything about college students, like they're not all like that. You know, a lot of them are just about today. But John Piper is someone who, when he was 20, he was thinking about being 70, kind of thing. Yeah. But all that to say, joking aside, it's a good read. It's an inspirational read. And then chapters 3 through 7, I think I would call that probably the bulk of the book. And he's really making this argument of Jesus being worth it. Jesus being worth it of our lives and our deaths, really. Chapters 8 and 9, he kind of goes through employment, how to glorify God, whether you are in the marketplace or on the mission field. Yeah. And then chapter 10, he just gives his prayer for the reader, and it's just a really great way to land the plane. So, Nick, did any chapters or themes stick out to you during this read-through?
I think something that will always somewhat be challenging to me is the idea of just running to face death and pain, especially. I think that's what he talks about. I think it was in chapter 4. So the title of chapter 4, Magnifying Christ Through Pain and Death. Me and my friends would always quote the verse that he talks about in here, right, in Philippians 1, to live as Christ, to die as gain. And we would say that as college students. And admittedly, we would say it just to give us an excuse to do stupid stuff. It's like, well, if I die doing this, at least, it was just like a stupid excuse and like a joke we had. But I think there really is value in knowing it's like, okay, my purpose here on earth really is to live for Christ, to do the things of Christ, to glorify him here. But really, it's like the worst possible scenario for people in their lives is death, right? That is a worst case scenario, right? But for Christians, that is our promise and assurance of eternity with God. And so it's like, if the worst thing possible to the world really is the best thing for us, it's like, that's a cool life that we get to live, right? But at the same time, I think that verse also motivates us, like, okay, that doesn't just mean like we're, just looking at our watches, waiting to leave this world, but like he says, don't waste your life when you're here, because that life matters to how we're going to be set up in eternity, right? And so that was good. Overall, it was really just, I don't think I super read a lot of, I'd say this is a very encouraging book. It's a very, I think you use the word inspirational book, that like when I'm like reading it, I'm like, dude, I'm ready. Like, let's go. Let's get up and go do some stuff, But I don't read a ton of books that are like that, but when I do, and this is a really special one that just made me like, just very, for my soul, just very encouraging and motivating to like, all right, I gotta do stuff, but like, let's do this, just very encouraging.
Have you ever seen Hamilton, or are you familiar with it at all?
I have not,
okay.
no.
There's this, just the theme of this book reminds me of, there's this interaction between, early on in the musical, Hamilton and George Washington. And Hamilton's this very, he'd be like a John Piper, like he's very idealistic, very like, I want my life to mean something, I want to be, the whole musical is really about, he wants to make a name for himself, he wants to be etched in the history books. And he wants to be given a place in the war where he can do that. And Washington is like, no, we need you alive. And Hamilton says over and over again, I'm not afraid to die. And Washington responds with this really like just thoughtful quote. He says, dying is easy, living is harder. And that's what I think that was one of the themes that stuck out to me through this. It's very, because last time I read this, I think I had that, I was young enough to where I'm like, you almost like romanticize like dying as a martyr on the mission field. It just gets you really excited, really encouraged. But then I think the harder question is, okay, if I was really willing to die for Christ, that would make an impact on the way I'm actually living, And so it's like, am I more in love with Christ, or am I more in love with just the romantic idea of, dying or whatever? Yeah. But I think it really tugs at something at our core, is we want our lives to mean something. We want our deaths to mean something. We don't want to feel like, he talks about a wasted life and just how tragic that really is. So
yeah, and there's it's a secular quote. I don't know from who, but somebody just in the world, right? But I saw it somewhere, and I think it's really profound and does speak to this somewhat, and speak to like what John Piper's talking about. But he says every human has 2 lives, and your second starts when you realize you only have one. Right? Which I think is like, not from a Christian perspective, but at the same time, it's just like, man, when I think, it's just like a lot of times when we push off, it's like, yeah, I'll do this tomorrow. I will make my life meaningful for tomorrow. But right now, I just got to get some money. I just got to get my savings up. I got to do these things. I just got to go to college. I just got to lock in for this moment. But we don't think like long term. It's like, okay, when I'm on my deathbed, what do I want to look back and like, did I live for myself? Did I live for other people? Did I live for Christ? Right? And so when we think, it's just like, this is my one shot at it, right? And not in the sense that like I need to try harder, pull my life up, and do everything by myself. But it's just like, man, like he says in the very 3rd chapter, after he's talking about his like personal testimony in this, boasting only in the cross, the blazing center of the glory of God. It's just what it's called, right? So it's like the only reason our life is worth anything is when we put it, our value on the cross. And so even thinking, we only got one life, we got one shot at this, and so how do we not waste it? And he continues as like by sacrifice for the gospel, right?
Yeah. That's kind of the upside down nature of the kingdom, right? Is whoever be great in the kingdom of God must become least, and must be willing to sacrifice our lives. And yeah, we do that really every single day. So I want to kick a hypothetical situation to you. So say one of the high schoolers that you've given this book to, they read, and they become sort of anxious about, I feel like I might be wasting my life. So how do you know that you're sort of on the right track? How would someone know that, okay, I'm on the right track of not wasting my life?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways you could answer that. I want to say first reaction, just like a simple thing, is like what I might ask that high schooler, is what are you seeking to elevate in your life, right? Because I think a lot of times when we think of like, don't waste your life, or I got to do something with meaning in my life, you think of like people like Hamilton, or I really do struggle with this. I'm just like, I want to have something that lasts beyond my physical life.
I want to be
right?
great. Yeah.
I want to be great. I want my name to be remembered. I want people to, won't happen, but I want people in 1,000 years to be like, Nick Hettinger. Dude, that's what I want. And so
It'll
a lot
happen.
maybe it'll happen. Fingers crossed. No,
I'll make it happen.
Jonathan will make it happen. He'll precede me. It'll be in Nick Hettinger Museum. No, but but a lot of times we're like, okay, I don't want to waste my life. I got to do things, and then we want to seek to elevate ourselves, because then we'll think, well, if I'm great, then that's a meaningful life, right? But I think the heart of this is you could go your whole life, nobody could remember you. But if you live for the gospel, if you elevate Christ's name over your own name, that's not a wasted life. You could have nobody remember you the day after you die. But obviously a little sad, hopefully I have family, right? But we could have nobody remember us a day, people don't even come to our funeral, which sounds bleak, sounds kind of depressing. But if we spend our life elevating the name of Christ, glorifying God, putting everything on the cross, and that even if our name is thrown in the mud, thrown in the dirt, that's a meaningful life. That is a life that's not wasted, because a life that's lived for God is not one that's wasted, right? And so I would maybe ask that students, like, hey, what are you seeking to elevate in your life right now? Yes, go to college. Like, let's do meaningful things. Let's impact society. Let's change the world for the gospel and be, helpful members of society. But at the same time, are we doing this so we can be greater, or are we doing this so God can be greater and glorified?
Sure.
Yeah.
You should come by my office sometimes. I have a very controversial quote.
Oh yeah, I see it. It's challenging to me.
Yeah,
Say it again, because I don't remember exactly.
The quote is by the guy's name is Count Zinzendorf, so it's a really old quote. It's like from the 1500s or something. But he said, "Preach the gospel, die, and be forgotten." And the irony that we remember him, he's like, his name is attributed, his name lives on. But
just be anonymous.
That's something I get from my dad. My dad told me a couple years ago, and my dad's a Christian, praise God, and he said it's very sobering to think that in 100 years, not even my grandchildren will remember my name.
Yeah.
Because he was doing this ancestry thing, and he was like trying to find records of his great grandfather, and he's like, I don't even know his name, And so, but that sounds really bleak, but it's actually like an Ecclesiastes style comfort, where it's like when you humble yourself and you recognize that you're living for something that's actually greater than that, it frees you from the responsibility of, I have to be great. I have to be remembered. And there's actually something freeing about that. But I try to be balanced with that and say, it's okay to want to be good at what you're doing. It's okay to want to be a great pastor and be remembered. But yeah, when we make that the center of our lives, we might end up losing it.
Definitely, yeah.
But when we submit it to Christ's life, I think we gain it. So, well, I hope this book was helpful. I hope this makes you want to go out and read it. Our goal is never to sort of spoil it for you, but it's always to encourage you to go out and read it. And so, Nick, as we sort of land the plane, who would you say this book is for? I have a feeling.
Everybody.
Yeah,
that type of thing. No, I really think.
This I'll make an exception for. I feel like this book
truly
you really could argue it's
truly is for everybody. I would say I did not read this in high school. I think this really would have impacted me if I would have read this in high school. Yeah. But I think especially, I'm reading this 2 years post-college now, but especially post-college, because a lot of these questions that you ask, and some people, like John Piper when he's in college, are very existential, and they're thinking, what is the meaning of life? When they're in college and high school, not many people are just thinking like, oh, what video game do I want to play? Just like little things like that. But really and I found that to be true in my life. Once you exit college, you're just like, oh shoot.
Yeah.
Now what do I do? Just eat, work, sleep, repeat for the next 60 years? Is that like what life is?
Yeah.
And so really once you get out into the daily like mundanity of life, it's just like, well, how do I not waste my life? And so truly for everybody, but reading those 2 years post-college was really beneficial for me. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure you'd agree that if there's any parents out there and they have kids who are in high school,
Oh, absolutely.
this would be a great resource.
Absolutely.
For
And
them.
I wish I would have read this in high school. It would have
Yeah.
been super helpful. But
Totally.
yeah.
Well, Nick, thanks so much for the time.
course.
Really appreciate you talking about this. We've been talking, of course, Nick Hettinger about John Piper's book, Don't Waste Your Life. Really hope you've enjoyed our conversation. If you like this episode, be sure to share it with someone that you think could benefit from this topic. This really helps others become aware of this podcast, helps others see other great content like 5 Good Minutes and Perspectives. Please join us again next month. Until then, I'm Jonathan Thiede, and this is Nick Hettinger. This has been Best Books. Thanks for watching.